anybody know sort of how Moses ended up here? How did Moses end up here in our passage for today? Yeah.
Because he did what God wanted him to do.
No. Why did he end up in the desert?
Moses was trying to lead the people to Red.
No.
So this is like after this, but so basically what happened was that Moses was Moses was born into a Hebrew woman, right? But then the Pharaoh had instructed people to kill all the males that were born into the families of the Jews. And so Moses was born, and since he was
Is this where they're doing all those what were they called, like the 10 things that will happen if
plagues.
What?
The plagues.
Yeah, if
This is like when Moses was born. I'm not talking about.
oh
Yeah, so Moses was born, and so he was gonna get killed. So his sister put him into a sort of thing made out of straws. And then she made a basket made out of straws, and she made it float down the Nile. Yeah? Okay, guys, this is ringing a bell.
yeah.
Right?
Oh,
Prince of Egypt.
yeah.
The movie.
That's a good movie.
Yeah.
Then she was
Testament.
Yes, it is incredible. But the point is that he had killed somebody, and Pharaoh was looking for him, so he had fled to the desert, and he found a burning bush.
Oh yeah.
And he was standing in front of the burning bush, and this is the context behind which today's passage happens. Moses is called by God from the burning bush, and he is told by God to go and confront Pharaoh, confront the king of the world at the time. And Moses felt like he was not qualified for this position. But then the thing is that Israel desperately needed direction because at this point, remember, they had no king. And also at this point, they had no judge because there was nobody to judge Israel. And so God needed to raise up a judge. But Moses was not wanting to do it because he felt like he was not qualified. Here's the thing though, because Israel desperately needed direction, God's first judge was not, he was chosen. He was chosen by God to be a judge. He didn't volunteer himself. Like, you know how Isaiah, whenever he was called to be a prophet, he raised his hands and he was like, "Here am I, Lord, please send me." Moses was chosen. He didn't volunteer by himself. So God's self-revelation, meaning God revealing himself to Moses, is sort of the foundational building block for everything that followed in Moses' life. And the thing is that Moses went through a lot of ups and downs if you read through the book of Exodus, but it provided him with this assurance that God himself had appeared before Moses, and let him know that, hey, it is I who am sending you. And he calls a lot of leaders even if they feel inadequate. An example of this is actually myself. Now, back in 2019, before the pandemic started happening and all of that, I remember I used to work on campus at the seminary that I was at, and I unfortunately came across a very, very toxic supervisor who wrote me up because I saw a mistake in her. I forgot what it was exactly, but I saw a mistake and I pointed that out. And she saw that as me challenging her. So she actually wrote me up to the school saying that I violated something or the other, disrespecting the authority of her supervisor when I did no such thing. But because of that, I was not allowed to work on campus anymore. And I was an international student at the time, and international students are not allowed to work anywhere except on campus.
Oh.
So I was not allowed to work. So I was out of a job. And then my parents are missionaries, so they have churches that support them back in Korea. But a lot of the churches were going through financial struggles, so their money was getting cut off. Because what's the first thing you cut when you don't have money? It's the people that you don't see, right? So, and they don't see my parents because my parents are, at the time they were going back and forth between India and so we had no money is what I'm trying to say. And I received a phone call while we were at an IKEA parking lot because we just wanted to get some meatballs at IKEA. So we went to the food court and got some meatballs, and one of my friends from seminary called me and he said, "Hey, do you have a job right now?" And I was like, "No, I don't." And he said, "Well, are you volunteering or doing some sort of ministry?" And I was like, "Nope, I'm not." And he said, "Well, there's an opening at my church. If you would like to apply, then you can apply for that, and you can actually work with a program called OPT. It's a program that international students are allowed to partake in off campus. So then now I'll be able to work off campus with under the status of OPT. And there's no cap on salary, so you can earn as much as they're offering, all those things. So, and then I applied, right? I applied with the forms that he sent me. So I applied, and then I went on to the church's website and I saw that you needed to be ordained a pastor, right? I'm still not ordained. And that you need to have had 2 years of full-time ministry experience. I had 1 year of, no, I didn't have one. I had a lot more than 1 year, but I had part-time experience, no full-time experience. And there were all these things like we prefer a married person, we prefer this. I was like, I fit none of those descriptions except fluency in English. That's the only job description that I fit, right? And I still applied. And guess what?
You got the job.
I got the job. And you know how?
Way spoil it for us.
But you guys know how I got the job? Because they closed the date on during March of 2020. What happened in March of 2020? COVID. Nobody was able to travel to do the interview in person because they wanted everybody to come. But then there was a pastor from the Philippines that had applied. There were a bunch of pastors from out of state that applied, but none of them could travel. But I lived in Dallas, and this was in San Antonio. So technically, I could just drive down. So that's what I did. I drove down, and I was the only candidate that interviewed for the position.
Oh my God.
And so I wound up getting the position. And it wasn't because of the fact that I was qualified. I fit none of the job descriptions except I'm a Christian and I speak English. That's the only thing, right? Because they needed a pastor for the English ministry. But yet, God called me, not because I was qualified, but because God needed me in that position for that time being. God chooses unlikely people, and God assures them not by their ability, but by His promise that I will be there with you, right? God doesn't call you because you are so skillful or you are so good, or although you might be. Y'all are probably more talented than me in a lot of things, but He doesn't call you because of your talents, but because of His purpose and the promise that He gives you. Yes, there'll be hard times. I'm not going to take away the hard times, but I will be with you during those hard times. So Exodus chapter 3, verse 10 to 15, which is, what we read today. Well, we read 7 to 15, but in the verses 10 to 15, God commands Moses to confront Pharaoh, and Moses objects, and he again feels not equipped enough. In the original language, God's name, it's pronounced Eye, Asher, Eye. I am who I am. It expresses God's absolute being and faithfulness. It's like, have you heard people introduce famous people like, oh, here's so-and-so. We don't need an introduction for him. You've heard that, right? Right? If somebody was introducing like The Rock or Kevin Hart, you probably don't need an introduction, right? But God is saying that even though you've never had an interaction with me, I don't need any introduction. That's what he's saying. The revelation, another thing is that revelation of God's name is the door to a relationship with him too. For example, Ian, when I first met you, I shook your hand, and what did I say? After hello,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. And then,
You introduce your name.
exactly, right? Mason, same thing. When we met,
There, that hallway.
right there in that hallway, you shook my hand, and what did you say? My name is Mason, right?
Yes. And okay, I feel really bad, and I should tell everyone. I told Benny when he was hired that I was going to be his liaison. He gave me his number. I don't think I ever called you about anything I had to hear every day. I felt so bad, and this went on for like 4 or 5 months before I think they actually like had a conversation.
Yeah. It's all good. It's
I was on SPRC, and I was going to be your person,
Yeah.
to connect with the staff.
Yeah.
And then I think my time was up on SPRC after that. Like 2 or 3 months later, and I was like, oh man, I didn't talk to Benny at all.
hey, we're talking plenty now, so that's great.
Hey, that's making
It's so bad.
But
What's illegal?
so okay, 6.
Basically, when Benny was hired, if there's any questions that he had about what to do at the church or what something he wanted to ask the staff but didn't want to ask, I don't know why you would not want to. Yeah, then you could ask me, and I would ask. And so I was like supposed to be like his support buddy when we would be hired.
And you didn't even
Texting.
And well, my position was expiring after like a couple more months.
Well, anyways, let's get back to the lesson. So God introduces himself as I am that I am. That's his name. And he says, I am, right? That's his name. So God is introducing himself to humanity with a name now. So we can now have a relationship with God. But there's one thing to note, and this might be uncomfortable for some people. If you're a Christian, fortunately or unfortunately, God's call for your life is unfortunately not optional. God commands Moses to leave everything, and Moses rescued and he had been rescued because remember Pharaoh was chasing him because he killed somebody. So God rescued him out of that, and he was raised up by God to lead the people of Israel for this purpose. Which is the purpose? To take the Israelites out of Egypt and into the promised land.
I'm so confused. You just said that God's calling for you is not optional.
yes, like when he tells you to do something, that's like what you need to do.
Well, I mean, yes, but like, if God calls me to be a nurse, ironically, that's what I want to be, and I feel God has called me to be. But that is my choosing of saying, yes, I will become a nurse.
So remember, whenever we talked about calling, there are 2 types of callings for all Christians. One is specific calling, and that calling is like you have, as you said, you have to say yes to that option, right? The second calling is what I'm calling the universal calling, and this is not optional, which is to be a witness to God's word, right? You have to be a witness to God's word. You have to be a witness of Jesus Christ, no matter where you're at. So that's what I'm saying. Is that there are 2 types of calling, and then the second one is not optional, right? If God calls you to, God calls people to different things at different times. God called all of you guys to be students as of right now. So you're students, right? But then for your career, right? God might give you options, actually. He doesn't say you have to do this. God gives you options and says choose. But then the fact of witnessing about Jesus Christ, he does not give you an option, right? That's what I'm trying to say.
That makes more sense.
And you are raised up for the purpose of witnessing Jesus Christ. So God's call, again, does not depend on your self-confidence, how you view yourself and all of that, but on confidence in God's presence and the fact that God is sufficient for you. And I've talked about this example already, right? But the biggest failure I had as a leader was during when we were going to missions at the Navajo Nation, and actually I don't think you've heard this. So yeah,
Is this where?
not you, Julia.
Is this where you were moving inside, but you didn't tell the kids?
So what happened was we were having VBS outdoors, right? And it started drizzling. So without consulting anybody, without consulting the parents, the leaders, I decided on my own accord to move it indoors. Now the parents didn't know this, and so they, without checking in the kids, they just left them at the park. And this is a huge park, right? And so they were out in the rain, and when the parents came to pick them up, they were just like playing around with sticks in the rain and all drenched up. And it wasn't raining heavily, but after like 3-4 hours of drizzling rain, you become wet. And so some of them, decided to call us and say, "Oh, is this where you drop off unwanted kids?" Like, it was just a mess, right? And I was in charge of the VBS at the time. So it was the biggest failure of my leadership career. But the fact is, by the end of the whole trip, the funny thing is, those kids, they kept on coming back. Even though they were left abandoned and all of that, which was bad, and it was my mistake, and it was the biggest leadership mistake of my life. But the kids who complained the most were participating. Kids whose parents are complaining the most were participating the most in the next coming days. And, their lives were changed. And
It's like fun.
it wasn't because of me. I mean, I just left kids out in the rain. So that's got to be some sort of, code broken somewhere, and some sort of like child, like, I don't know, some rule somewhere. But in the end, God decides to use me regardless of my shortcomings, and use me for His glory, not because of my qualifications, but because of God's purpose and God's plan for the lives of the kids that were attending the VBS. So I just want to, okay, guys, turn to Exodus chapter 4.
Are we reading something?
Yeah. Okay, this is really fun detail in the Bible. So read Exodus chapter 4, verse 2 and 3. Two and 3.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so confused. Okay. Then the Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. The Lord said, "And throw it on the ground." What was that? Oh, Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran.
All right. What does it say? It's a staff.
Yeah.
Right? It's a staff. And he threw it. Right? It's out of his hands now. And then notice what happens to the staff. Okay. Can somebody read us verse 20 of that same chapter?
I will.
Okay.
Verse 20.
So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took God's staff in his hand.
So now it's no longer a staff. It's the staff of God. Right? It's the same staff. Right? It was the same staff. Nothing changed, but it's now God's staff. Yeah,
I thought the staff got turned into a snake.
it did.
So he
He wrapped it again, and then it turned back into a steak.
I was imagining he was just carrying out a snap.
No, I didn't read it. Okay, so the reason why I left that out is because, like, yes, we could go through all the miracles and all of that happened, but the point I'm trying to make is a staff. When he let go
that makes
of the staff, right? When he let go, it's no longer his. Now it's God's staff, the staff of God. Yeah.
if it never turned back into the staff, people would have thought that he was a crazy man.
He needs a walking stick. Yeah, a walking stick.
And just a side note, guys, it says that, whenever the 10 plagues are going on, we're not going to talk about the 10 plagues, so I'll just briefly mention this. It says that Moses' snake ate up all the other snakes of the of the magicians that turned their staff into snakes. So what I'm guessing is that the other magician's staff turned into cobras, and then Moses' staff turned into a king cobra and ate up all the other snakes, because king cobras eat other snakes. Anyways, that's just a side note. But anyway, so God's authority gives Moses and strength whenever we face hard tasks, and we need to let go. And then now the task is no longer a task, is a task of God, right? God is going to take care of that task now when you let it go. Of course, you need to do your part. You need to, throw it, and God instructs Moses to pick it up again. So he picks it up again. So whenever God tells you, like whenever you're assigned things, yeah, of course, you need to do what you need to do, but it is ultimately up to God to do that. So that's the first point, and I don't think we have enough time to go through the second point. And also, so we'll just go through it very, very briefly. And guys, make a note of this. We're not gonna read it because we don't have time today. But if you go to Exodus chapter 18, okay, make a note of it. Exodus chapter 18, and then read the whole chapter. So Jethro, who is the father-in-law of Moses, comes and visits Moses and sees that Moses is judging Israel, but he's doing everything. So he's doing like everything from like judging, accounting. I imagine accounting, like I imagine like all that needs to be done within the tribe of Israel. Like Moses is doing everything. So imagine, right? Imagine I have to preach at the adult service. I have to do Sunday school. I have to run the live stream. I have to take care of all the offerings that come in. I have to take care of the new folks. Is that church going to be like working properly? No, right? But imagine if Mason or any church leader or volunteer was having to do everything. Like that would not work, right? So actually, Jethro advises Moses to divvy up the tasks that he has to do. So the lesson that we can learn from that, the point that we can learn is that spiritual leadership is not a solo assignment, which is why I'm so glad that Mason and I have different things that we are in charge of, because we're not supposed to do it alone. And God values delegation. He values wise stewardship, and he values teamwork, right? And I'm proclaiming that all of you guys are Christian leaders because you are all Christians and you are all good influences to those around you. And you might have a lot of Christian friends, but I'm sure that there's somebody in your life that's not a Christian, and you are therefore a Christian leader. And whenever you guys sort of go out of schools and all those things, that when you take on more responsibilities in the church, and I encourage all of you guys to take responsibility in the church, because we really need the next generation to lead the church too. It's not a solo assignment, okay? So I just want you guys to know that walking with God and being a Christian leader is not a solo assignment. Everybody is in it together. God's solution to leadership overload is wise delegation and shared responsibility. Okay, just keep that in mind. When we look at the life of Moses, and we'll close with this, Moses models humility, responsiveness to God's voice. Even though he felt like he was unqualified, he didn't want to do it, he still obeyed. And willingness to accept wise counsel from Jethro, and he understood the necessity of shared responsibilities. Moses, with all of his great tasks of teaching, is not unwilling to learn. Who can say that they know more than Moses, right? None of us do. But even so, he was willing to learn. And ultimately, he strengthened himself and Israel for God's purpose. Right? He didn't do it for himself. He did it for God's purpose. Where is God inviting you to step forward in your life? Even if you feel unqualified, who can you invite to share the burdens of leadership, of service in your life? Are you willing to listen to godly advice, even if it hurts to hear sometimes? God uses humble and willing leaders, and all of you are leaders. I can guarantee that. Those who rely on His name, accept wise counsel from your peers, and share God's work with other people. So God is calling us to do all of this. So we need to have confidence in God that if God called you to do it, that He will carry you through it. And we need the humility to accept and obey, even if we don't feel like doing it initially. And we need to be able to share that work and cooperate with other people within the church to accomplish this goal of our calling, which is to be a witness to Jesus Christ.